Welcome, those of you who have not been here before, and those of you who have. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Jacob H. Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, the place where the academic discipline of inner city studies was born. And we offer both an undergraduate and graduate degree in inner city studies here. It's important to know that several of our original faculty that developed and implemented the inner city studies discipline were also key figures or fathers of the African-centered movement in Chicago. To drop some names, they were, for example, Doctors Jacob H. Carruthers, Anderson Thompson, Conrad Worrell, and Robert Stark. An important legacy from our African ancestors is their pedagogy, and an important component of their pedagogy is the vision of the teacher as a selfless healer intent on inspiring, transforming, and propelling students to a higher spiritual and intellectual level. And that's exactly what we do here at CCICS, as we call it. And we do it better than anybody on earth. Over the years, our students have been able to study at the feet of these founders of the inner city studies discipline and the fathers of the African-centered movement. And we are very proud of the fact that we have one of the highest graduation rates from our master's program than any program in the university. So students are our priority, and we have hundreds of testaments from our students over the years as to how effective we are in doing what we do. The center, as we call it, has graduated numerous undergrads and graduate students. Over 160 of those students have gone on to earn PhD degrees at some of the leading and most prestigious universities in this country. So I remind you, students of Northeastern, among those of you, if you're here and you haven't registered for the fall 2017 semester, registration is still open until August 24th, and I urge you to not only register, but register to take classes here at the center. We offer many of the general education courses, as well as a variety of core, required, and elective courses in inner city studies. I really encourage you to take advantage of our small and intimate class size, our holistic student-centered strategies across all dimensions of our students' experiences at the center, and our outstanding faculty and staff. We're also proud of our tradition of community partnership, which currently includes the Alternative School Network, the Midwest region of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, the president of which is our very own Ms. Rosetta Cash, the Chicago Defender Charities, Move Me Soul, which is a dance group founded by our own Aisha Jaco, as well as her Magnifying Urban Realities and Affirming Lives, better known as Mural. We also have a partnership with Pearson View and the Kemetic Institute, which is a research organization housed here at the center, concerned with the restoration and reconstitution and reconstruction of African civilization through scholarly research, African-centered education, artistic creativity, and spiritual development. Of note, the first discrete entity that led directly to the development of the Kemetic Institute was its research component, which was founded by Dr. Jacob H. Carruthers, Brother Ben Levy, Dr. Anderson Thompson, and Dr. Conrad Worrell in 1978. So, you know, this year, on September 8th, we will celebrate our 51st year as a campus of Northeastern Illinois University. And during these 51 years, among many things that we have done, we have developed a tradition of public lectures on a multiplicity of topics. Tonight is an exciting and excellent example of this long-standing tradition. Tonight, we warmly, very warmly welcome Dr. Greg Carr, Associate Professor of Africana Studies and the Chair of the Department of African American Studies at Howard University, who, by the way, is not a stranger to CCICS. He's been here before, and some of you have probably been here and heard him. Others of you are probably his students, like you. Aside from being a department chair, Dr. Carr's stellar and vast record of achievements include he is an adjunct faculty at the Howard School of Law. He holds a PhD in African American Studies from Temple University and a law degree from the Ohio State University College of Law. He was the Philadelphia School District's very first resident scholar on race and culture, and he led a team of academics and educators in the design of the curriculum framework for Philadelphia's mandatory high school African American history course. Notably, these materials were the first to approach African American history using an Africana Studies methodology. And if these accomplishments alone are not enough, he is also a co-founder of the Philadelphia Freedom Schools Movement, a community-based academic initiative that has involved over 13,000 elementary, high school, and college students. And seldom, if ever, is he idle. Dr. Carr has been an invited lecturer on pedagogy from Howard University's Center for Excellence in Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, and he has presented his curriculum work for the Board of Public Education in Salvador and has lectured across the United States and in countries like Ghana, Egypt, South Africa, Brazil, France, England, to name just a few places. Moreover, Dr. Carr has led or co-led student study courses, and he has led them in South Africa and or Egypt. He has been named Professor of the Year 3 times by the Howard University Student Association, the College of Arts and Sciences Student Council, and the College of Arts and Sciences Honors Association. He is the co-editor of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations multi-volume African World History project, and his personal publications can be found in numerous places, journals, readers, and so forth. Finally, and I could go on and on, but I won't. Finally, Dr. Carr is the first vice president of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations and a former member of the board of what we call NCBS, the National Council for Black Studies. And he has appeared as a spokesperson for Howard University in a wide range of print and electronic media. Without further ado, Please, please, please help me welcome the renowned Dr. Greg Carr, whose theme tonight, as you can see, is Black Education and Politics in America.
The theme, Black Education and Politics in America, I thought maybe we would talk a little bit about the nature of education and perhaps have a really good conversation about what we can do at this moment. And of course, it wouldn't be right in terms of process. That's right. I mean, we're going to talk about the state of the war. That's what Carruthers would do. Maybe at the end, after he went through. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. This is probably the most offensive slide you'll see. This guy should be familiar to some people in here. I'm not quite sure what color he is, but I think he self-identifies as white. The question we have is anti-black violence in this post-American state. Why do I say post-American? Well, we know that we have reached a point in American history that anybody could have predicted. The country is coming apart. It has never been a country in terms of one culture, one identity. But as we see now, we could very well live to see the disintegration of the American state. It's exciting times. Exciting times. I mean, this was inevitable. You've got a situation where, in fact, I got in my bag as I collect comic books, and this week they released the first in a new comic book called Collectivity. So now they're already trying to theorize what happens when California leaves the Union. It'll give states' rights a whole new meaning. It's going to be federalism or it's not. But this one here has some very interesting ideas. We're not going to dwell on that because you all know about it a lot more than I do. I mean, this recent concept that somehow young people should have a plan or else they won't get their high school diploma, as if a high school diploma is awarded based on a promise rather than on what you've already done. And I'm sure the lawyers have already ginned up. Karen Lewis, the teachers union have already got their lawyers in play, and I assume that's going to find its way into the court. I don't see how you can deprive someone of a certification that they have earned based on, adding another requirement that hasn't been passed by the legislature. So we'll see. But just the thought of it is what really we'll talk about a little bit tonight in a different context, because it's a form of state violence. It's a form of state violence. I mean, we know that we face a lot of challenges here in Chicago, and that, anytime you have to say Black Lives Matter, of course, that means that they don't. I guess in the last several hours, the police chief in Minneapolis, this white woman, has resigned. The mayor forced her to resign. Somali policeman shot a white woman from Australia. Now, I guess that's just going too far now. So this woman resigned. It wasn't Jamar Clark, even though Philando Castile wasn't in Minneapolis, St. Paul proper, it wasn't Philando Castile. Apparently, there have also been several canines killed in the last month or so, and she's been catching a lot of heat because people's dogs have been shot, and now white women have been shot, so she doesn't have a job tonight. Reinforcing the fact that, of course, you can kill Black people with impunity, and whatever did or didn't happen in the case of this Somali policeman, the Somali community apparently in Minneapolis, St. Paul, is in a row right now. They don't know which way to go, and of course, this man had on a uniform. But you best believe that he's probably going to pay the price for taking that life. But then we have self-violence. What happens when we internalize? What happens when we internalize this anti-Black violence and we turn to guns on ourselves? And there's really no need to get into a long conversation about that tonight. We know what we face. We ride around, walk around, say Chicago, and we see young people walking them down the street, riding bikes, and just being young. And you think to yourself, wow, at any given moment, any one of us could not be here. And that's just simply unacceptable. But it comes from this question of state violence and anti-Black violence. Anti-Black violence doesn't have to be perpetrated, after all, by white people for it to be anti-Black. So how do we engage in this challenge of educating ourselves? At the core of education is mastery. And I know a lot of you all probably saw this when it started here, the Carrie James Marshall exhibit. I caught it in New York. It's actually a picture I went up several times. I can't get enough of this brother. So, he's just an amazing guy, right? So, and I think this was right after the exhibit opened in New York at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met Brewer, which is around the corner from the big Met building. And what struck me was that there weren't more people. I'm like, this thing should be difficult to get in. And so, in thinking about Carrie James Marshall, I thought tonight, as it relates to education and politics in Black America and among African people here in this country, when we think about transformation, we have to think about more than ourselves. It's interesting. I was looking at this particular piece, and this elder came up. He had this bad jacket on. I said, "Hey man, you mind if I get behind you and snap you and put you into this picture?" He said, "No, brother, go ahead." So we struck up this conversation about the Negro Leagues, and because the thing I found is that when you come into art museums or galleries or spaces like this, it's the conversation between people that builds the community. And so we start talking about politics, we're talking about a communal exercise, and art like this requires reflection, but the communal reflection is often the best of all. And we took students up on one of the trips, and just standing there and watching them stand there and talk to each other and become engaged in this art that forces us, requires us, in fact, to think, is really remarkable. Now, I don't know if you all know, I know many people here probably don't work with Kehinde Wiley. Kehinde Wiley is another artist, younger than Carrie James Marshall, very popular. You see his work now. I guess, is it Empire? I don't watch Empire a lot. They've had it on endless loop on several cable stations, and so I'll turn on the television, and then 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll hear somebody screaming, and I'll wake up and so it's Empire. So I'll watch 20 minutes of it and go back to sleep. But I figure if I've seen 20 minutes, I've seen the whole thing. What strikes y'all about this? This is a triptych. These are 3 separate pieces, but this is his style. Anybody? Definitely religious iconography, right? Clearly European religious iconography. Classic European style. Anybody? Royalty, definitely. You see the crowns, right? Like a Madonna and Child kind of thing. The brother in the middle, the young brother there, with Frank with the halo, right? It's good work, huh? failing black father.
Because the only male representative is holding the dead child.
Didn't do nothing about it. Interesting.
And also the mother is chained down at the bottom.
Yes. Over here.
In the middle picture.
Oh, in the middle picture. Oh, yes, there's down here on, oh, yes, she is, got the shackle on her wrist. Interesting. Yes. I'm on point at your neck. Let me share a quote. Well, actually, no, this is Carrie James Marshall, School of Beauty, School of Culture. This is one of the young sisters, Chris, she and her sister, India, were two of the students who we took to look. And they stayed in front of all these pictures like 15, 20 minutes apiece. And it's like, look, we got to go back to D.C. or not. But this one in particular caught their eye. That's Chris looking at it. She caught her sister over in a minute. It's a little bit bigger picture. This is one of my favorites. Now, apparently this was a place in Chicago. What do we see here? Here. That's his wife. And then there's Cheryl here. And there's the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, the album cover. Right? I thought you meant all the way over to the right where it says Tate. That's actually one of the artists that he drew on for inspiration for this piece from an exhibit. You see Sheba Company right there selling clothes, but it's also a riff on a famous portrait out of the Dutch masters. So you see the sister with the kind of flourish with the sleeves there, and you see the brothers over there with the ruffle. If you look, and I'm sorry, Phil, I know you got me on the thing. You see the ruffle there on his collar. They're selling clothes. And of course, Carrie James Marshall is in this picture. Where is he? He's taking the picture. The sister is posing for him. You see him with the flash there in the mirror. She's posing for him. Right? And but my favorite is at the bottom center, of course. That is taken from Disney's Snow White, and it's two-dimensional. My man's done left his binky all the way over here. Amazing how you get fascinated by these white women. But these adults are going on about their business. They don't let the baby handle the white girl, but she got the heads on her like, I got this, I'm drinking my thing, yeah, I got this. I'm gonna expose what this is for my man so he'll never get this twisted again. It's very interesting to see, but if we look at this another 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, we would ultimately begin a spirited discourse about everything in there, right? You see red, black, and green as a motif and all of this stuff. But I think it's, there was a review in Even magazine. It's kind of an irregular magazine. It's published maybe once or twice a year. And this dude, Thomas Chatterton Williams, is very interesting. He reviewed Mastery, and he reviewed one of Kehinde Wiley's exhibits that was set in Paris, mounted in Paris. And Thomas Chatterton Williams wrote a book about 10 years ago called Losing My Cool. He says he and his brother, his father, he's a black dude, his father used to make them do SAT words after school, made them read hundreds of books outside of school, and he said, that's what saved me from hip-hop. He's a bit of a snob, but he's a fascinating guy. I had my friend school kids one winter read that book, and we started talking about the implications of this losing my cool. He said, literacy literally saved me from being not illiterate, but illiterate. In other words, I could read, but I just choose not to read. He said, my father did that for me. But this was his review, and it's a much longer review. I just took his piece out. He says, with Wiley, once the novelty of the experiment wears off, urban black people and poses of classical European portraiture, the works, including a couple of enormous oil paintings of large figures in repose against the artist's signature, patterned backgrounds, seems oddly salafistic. In other words, it's kind of a trick, but once you've seen it once or twice, it kind of loses its interest, right? He says they convey stubbornly little outside of themselves. A question is posed without even the gesture of an answer. This is one kind of all black everything, but it feels like a gimmick, the aesthetic equivalent of blue ketchup. Tough on getting in there, Wiley. What y'all think about that? I mean, once you've seen one of those stained glass pieces, the motif doesn't change. But think about how Marshall constantly engages us and has us think not only about his engagement, but about our own lives as people of African descent. How this piece can spark different kinds of conversations, perhaps, than the Wiley piece. What was Kerry James Marshall say? Well, Kerry James Marshall said this in the LA Times earlier this year. He says at a certain point you have to decide whether you'd be satisfied always acknowledging the beauty and the greatness of what other people create, or if you want to be in the same arena. You can't keep saying that a superhero is a white guy with a square jaw and broad shoulders, because every time you say that, it means you can't be a superhero. You have to demonstrate that you believe you have a capacity to be a superhero too, or the capacity to be an old master. And the thing about Marshall is, you know, the Met, this is what the Met did. The Met curators picked 20 pieces from their entire collection that they put in conversation with Marshall in the version of Mastery that showed at the Met. So they went and picked their baddest pieces. And when you go through Marshall and then you go in the room where they had the Renoirs and they got, you know, you're looking like, these dudes are inferior. I mean, what it really brought out was Marshall absorbed those traditions and then transcended them. And then he joined them not because it was a charity case, or they thought it was a novelty act. He joined them because they had no choice. And they did their best to surround his work in that exhibit when it was in New York with the best they had. And so it's like, man, this is hilarious. And I wonder if you juxtapose that against Wiley. This isn't a critique of Kehinde Wiley as much as it is an attempt to begin to enter this conversation about what is the purpose of education, how do we deal with collective excellence, and what does mastery look like when we're all involved. With Wiley, it's like, okay, dude, that was clever. With Marshall, it's like, that's us. That's us up there. And when it's us, the concept of mastery becomes perhaps manageable for all of us. And that collective thrust is there, and when it's in conversation with other cultures, what has been transcended is the notion that somehow we gotta prove something to somebody. No, we belong, but we can leave too. If we just put a hex on it. Let the baby handle it. We buying clothes, getting our hair fixed. So what happens when we have collectivities as political incubators? This is my hand there. One of y'all's homies, D'Astor Gates, has it's very interesting at the Art Museum in D.C., the National National Art Gallery. The National Art Gallery has a tower where they exhibit like prominent figures. There's only been the first person of African descent to exhibit in the tower, and only the second living person to ever have an exhibit in the tower down there on the National Mall was Kerry James Marshall. D'Astor Gates is the second. And I went to see him give a talk a few months ago when they opened the piece, The Minor Arts. And, you know, I've been asking people, particularly people in the arts, but also some Chicagoans who I know have a sense of, you know, what this cat is trying to do. I asked Mama Ife first. She told me to ask Talbot, so I still got to ask Talbot Mama Ife about that. But, you know, because I'm fascinated by D'Astor Gates. You know, how do you convene collective sensibilities? Here's a guy who's a roofer, you know, his father was in the trades, and so he learns the trades, and he's got this genius that he's applying to the arts. Of course, that's some of the remnants, and I guess tomorrow, twist the other arm and take me over there to see the rest of the library, because I want to see where the evidence are. You know, that's part of it. You know, there's only one room in the tower. And this is actually, that's the brochure, but this book, My Labor is My Protest, is an earlier convening of essays by and about D'Astor Gates. And so I'm hoping they get open there. In part because, well, two things. Number one, if you all try to find that book now online anywhere, I don't think you can see it priced anywhere less than $700, $800. Wow. Yes, I mean, because art, you know, once art catalogs are printed, that's it. So, you know, I'm a firm believer in trying to have the literal book. Because when they try to have the lights, I don't believe in ebooks. I mean, they're convenient, but, you know. But it's interesting because the essays in this book talk about the power of blackness. And blackness as spectacle. Fred Logan in particular, Tarrant, lists of work, Nowhere, Everywhere. collectivities, where you see Theaster Gates there, you see, of course, this is one of the pieces that he has here in the city. Have any of y'all been to this piece? Right? So you all know exactly where that is and what he's trying to do, what he's trying to do. But there's a piece in this journal on the Chimurenga Library. I've been to that place in Cape Town, South Africa. It's a small little venue where some young South Africans tried to put together a library and publish a journal. The idea is that place matters. Like, this place matters. And whenever you pull people together in a collectivity, you can create a political incubator, because it isn't just about the thing, but the thing matters. The thing matters. Let me see, what does Gates say? Theaster Gates says, you know, together, when given a direction, the collections become a collective, because collectives aren't just about people, they're also about things. That's important as we think about education. What does it mean to lose one's things? To lose one's stuff? Particularly in an era where the impermanence of things is seen as a virtue. You know, so when Gates has in this exhibit, you can't see the remains of high school gym floors, where there's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of championships fought and won, a lot of romances started or stopped. And then what you see is these wooden slats of these basketball courts assembled. And then you say, okay, you stand here and somebody says, oh man, it's just, what is that? It's just wood. No, it's not just wood. Those things have meaning. But they only have meaning in a collective sense. You have to bring the meaning to it. And of course, this is the roof of a church back here. I don't know if y'all ever seen this piece. And he replaced some of the tiles. You can't see it beyond the wooden tower there with the ebonies, but there's several bronze pieces there, so it looks like the sun is shining. What he has done is remove the regular tiles, the slate tiles, and put bronze there. And what he's talking about, the name of this exhibit is the minor arts, because he's saying, you know, a lot of times what we consider minor is in fact the central thing. And so what we have to do is honor the fact that our things are valuable. And so he deals with the things that we all have. Tar, paper, throwaway stuff. Give me the stuff. These are our things. And I think about that in this room where so many people, I mean, how many times has Conrad talked about the people who have been in this space? The things that have happened in this building. Things matter. And somebody says, we'll give you a better building. No, but you can't give us this stuff. These are the things. There's something in here. Now, what does that mean as well when it comes to things like paper and archives? We'll talk more about that in a second as it relates to this question of education and politics. How do we balance individuality and commonality? Mastery as a collective objective. Because one of the things Theaster Gates says is, you know, I'm not the kind of guy who does a lot of collaborative work. He'll admit that. And a lot of people who create kind of in themselves, right? But he says, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do right, it will invite others to collaborate out of their own creativity, and then the conversation that ensues out of that will build something that we all benefit from. But that's a dicey proposition. I mean, after all, it gets paid by the University of Chicago. I don't care how creative you are. There are individuals and there are systems. And our fight is with systems. State violence is state violence. Now, the individuals carry it out, but the system is what we have to figure out how to dismantle. The question is, can our mastery form a collective that can resist that system and then transcend it? Mastery has to be the key. So how do we balance the individuality that we all have? That in education, for example, our young people are encouraged to pursue, do what you want with your life, create, wait. Now there's got to be at least one other person than me in this room that didn't get that talk. You can do whatever you want, I'll be happy. No, that ain't what my mama said. Thank God. You know what I'm saying? I want you to be the best, but you got a debt. There's a service that you know, so this idea that they're telling our young people, oh, be everything you can be, they're not giving them resources, and then blaming them when they're not everything they can be. But at the center is the individual. How do you balance the individual creativity with the commonality? Mastery has to become a collective objective. What is the objective of mastery? Well, time and place is essential. We're in a city, a huge city, Chicago, but the city is increasingly central. Over half the people in the continent of Africa living in cities. They're going to be more than that by the next 20 years, 30 years. People are living in cities becomes something that's negotiated. There are places here that don't exist anymore. Places that people spent their lives in. Places that other people say, this is an eyesore, tear it down. No. I think about living color, right? The man, you can tear a building down, but you can't erase a memory. And you always can tell a society by how it treats its things. Because there are certain things that will never be torn down in this society. And it could be raggedy, it could be, no, but that's the place where such and such happens. But for you, no, let's just wipe it clean. And far too often we find ourselves saying, yeah, tear it down. No, wait. Even if you take the whole thing down, give me some of those bricks. Or give me some, because you can't, once you remove the thing, what have you done to the collective purpose? In many ways, for us, the event has become the archive. If there's nothing left of the thing, we have the memory. Everybody in here, I'm sure, remembers an event, many events, I'm sure, that when you reflect on them, you're taken back to that moment. And you can think about how you changed in that moment. I have a lot of them, thanks to a lot of people in this room. There's been a lot of places that, and you ever been in a place where you're sharing your memory of an event with somebody else who was there, or letting them know what it meant to you, and they say, man, I didn't think about that. Now that's not an indictment, but it is a recognition that sometimes we don't sit in an event and mark it. You know, I've been accused of doing that maybe over much. So well, let's all stop. Do you realize what this is? Let's just pause right here. You know. And in fact, students will tell you when we go to Kemet, we go to, tell them don't go halfway around the world and not go the last 2 steps. You're not gonna stay on the bus. Don't worry, we'll grab you. In fact, Chris, the girl who's standing in front of Carrie James Marshall, her sister India, claustrophobic. So here we are in Senefru in the pyramid. And we had to talk the child, and halfway getting in there, and I'm sure many of y'all been in there, right? With the person that all of a sudden just has a panic attack in that little square going down the shaft. We sang, we pushed, we pulled, we stopped, we paused, we got in the larger chamber, and it was like everything transcended. She was like, oh, I've been scared, I've been claustrophobic my whole life. But at this moment, it was just like everything was lifted. And it was like, all right, everybody, let's just sit in this moment. Because she's having that experience, she's the only one having it as an individual, but this is a collective enterprise. This is something we were able to achieve collectively. So let's all sit in this, because 40, 50 years from now, you tell your grandchildren about it. And this event is the archive. The event becomes the archive. And that's very important to understand how the event becomes the archive. Now, teaching is about modeling content mastery and exhibiting the ability to develop community. And of course, this is Asa Hilliard. We think about Asa many times in here. And Young Gifted and Black talks about this. He said, good teachers, and there's a lot of teachers here tonight. You got to have content mastery and the ability to help others acquire. So I'm going to show you how to do this. And you're not going to do it as an individual. We're all going to be together. That was how we moved out of not being able to read and write in English after enslavement to a quantum leap and reversing that percentage in the space of 2 generations. And now it becomes a competition. What did you score? What did you score? What did you score? Wait a minute, hold on. What happened to mastery, collective mastery, a basic level of mastery? That's very important to understand, because teaching models content mastery and helps others acquire it. What does modeling content mastery look like? It's the imitation. We've all imitated people who were excellent. We all think of teachers we've had in our lives who were so good at what they did. And even how they move through the world, their meticulous attention to detail, the way they move through the world, we just kind of watch them. And you see, when they are able to help you develop it, that's when community begins to develop. Those touchstones, those moments are very important. Now, cyberspace, well, cyberspace in the collective. Now everybody's by themselves. We had a week-long intensive. I'll say more about that in a moment. National Endowment of Humanities gave us a little money to go through some archives at Howard. They're very important. I won't mention them in a few minutes. But it was very interesting to be sitting with scholars from Morehouse and Virginia Union, and because we wrote the grant for HBCU scholars, because too often in our black spaces, our archives have been set upon by vultures who like to write books. I mean, if I have, in the last year, there have been, at least 3 or 4 books on the Chicago Black Arts Movement. All about fine scholars at white institutions. All of them black. All of them white. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter who you are. And what matters is the fact that that should be narrated by the people who lived it. And we have to figure out a better way of tending to our collective and our archive, because the political implications of these books is that's over. And it's episodic. That's over. Now let's do the autopsy. These are autopsy books, no matter how well intended. And these are living traditions. Living art. Everybody in here is a living repository. One of the reasons I love coming to Chicago is just listening to the stories of people who have been through these living archives. It's not written anywhere. The event as archived, the presence as archived, the thing itself. And when we think about cyberspace, you know, we were in community, we're sitting in a circle, we're interviewing elders, we're going back and forth, everybody's presenting, and staccato, it was almost like a staccato beat. You could bet that at least one person in a circle of about 12 people was going to be in the palm of their hand on this phone. And I'm talking about some people, the senior, the elder, Nate Norman, who was called himself retired, and he went to Morehouse, and I told him, man, don't be within 100 miles of a Negro college, brother, and have a teachable skill, because they will put you to work. And damn sure, 6 months later, you're teaching full load in English at Morehouse. I told you not to go over there, brother. But anyway, hey, can't spell it. I know it's only 3 letters, but anyway. But even Pop had the phone out. Like, Pop, what you doing, man? Oh. These devices are the devil in some ways. But what happens to cyberspace and the collective? Because now everybody thinks they're talking about the same thing. Kyrie Irving say you want to be traded. Right now, while we're here, there are literally thousands of young black people arguing over whether or not they're making memes of LeBron looking at Kyrie. But they're all individuals. It's a cyber collective. Commentary and the spectacle then become the marker for mastery.
That's good.
Ain't nobody give you anything. Now, see, like you're a preacher. You know you get real-time feedback, brother. And you were trained by some of the best, up to and including our friend and brother Jeremiah Wright. You know good and well. Can you imagine being a cyber preacher? Because there are those where they on Periscope and they be sitting in the hotel room and they see little parts blowing up and then dude, how you preaching and nobody there? I see the lamp, I see the bed. I'm saying this is not something that I grew up as a child. Come on, man, you gotta see this cat. And if you did listen on the radio, our greatest dream as children was trying to get to Salem Church and hear one of the great preachers, Jasper Williams. Listen to WLAC in the middle of the night, 11, 12 years old, supposed to be asleep. Here comes Jasper Williams with this sermon, I fell in love with a prostitute. It's something salacious about it. It's a Bible story, right? But then when you see like the funeral of C.L. Franklin and you see these ministers one after the Rosa Parks' funeral, you got to be there for that. That's an interactive thing. But when you consign the cyberspace, you can say anything. Off pieces, and the spectacle becomes mastery. Somebody sounds like they know what they're talking about. But there's no critical engagement. So you see, damn. This beef right here. I know shade on the Detroit. I know y'all know this cat on the right, right? Super man, I know it. I'm not mad at that, brother. I'm not mad at Umar too. I know Umar almost 20 years. Umar Johnson has worked diligently to promote his worldview and his work. Sitting in 52nd Street, getting my hair cut, become Umar was on cassette tapes. That's 20 years ago. Even that's a long time. But the technology shifted, and now, I don't know if some of y'all know about what this is right here. This happened a few months ago, right? The beef between Umar and Sarah Subasetti. As they say, Sarah started it on YouTube. This is YouTube beef. But what I paused after I stopped laughing. Twice. No, it wasn't twice. Actually, it was many more times than that. And I said, Umar responded to Sarah Subasetti's critiques the way people who have worked real hard respond when somebody comes behind them and says, you ain't do nothing. And it was just crazy. he completely lost it. I ain't encouraging y'all to look at it, but what it is it's spectacle. Now mind you, they say, oh, I'm following Dr. Ben, I'm following Dr. Carr, and they go, and who's gonna check? Who's gonna have a conversation? And in this particular beat, Umar is saying, he's saying, yeah, you know, we need to have a forum that is moderated by the elders. See, but what's the collective in that? Which elders? Who you calling? Is this are you signifying? I mean, and everybody watching it is individual looking at this, and people picking up sides. It's like WWF. In fact, Umar says it's like you acting like it's WWF, and I'm like, dude, appreciate the irony. But then last week. This right here. Now, he's from Houston, but I know he spent a lot of time in Chicago, so that's kind of like got a lightweight adopted homie right over Martin. now I ain't mad because Roland and I actually began a relationship because of cyberspace. One of our best students, Shanice Thompson, we went to see 12 Years a Slave. It was a screening of 12 Years a Slave in D.C., and Roland was moderating, and at one point Roland said he was a free man. And Shanice blistered him. She brought in all the prison industrial complex. How you say you're free man? Then he jumped on her, and then I said to him, you're absurd. You want to attack my student, man, come on. But he didn't know who I was, which is great, you know. Because I'm like, because I ain't nobody, you know. I feel like Langston Hughes, another man who was no stranger to Chicago. I am a Negro, servant to you all. In other words, I don't need no title, no name. But I lost it in that moment, as if Shanice needed any help. She don't need no help. I was on with to sleep. The next morning, there had been Twitter war, because apparently all the house students jumped on him. Then he said, well, let's have a debate. Listen to Dr. Carr and Roland Martin. We're going to debate at Crampton Auditorium. Oh, hold on, man. And now we go back up to the top pictures. No. Because part of it is the desire to show one's skill. Right? But this ain't hip-hop, this ain't the cypher, this ain't basketball, this ain't wrestling. And so anyway, long story short, Roland reached out, we started talking, and next thing you know, I go down there once a week and be on his show, but I wasn't there that day. On this day, Roland Martin basically played the referee. He asked Umar Johnson, where's the money for the school, what's the update? He said you're related to Fred Douglas' family, says you're not, can you explain? People say you don't have all those degrees, could you walk us through? And he answered all three of those questions. He left it alone. Then the panelists jump in. The sister in the middle, Lauren, good sister, she says, she starts with, come on, Umar, you smart man, because they get on the question of interracial marriage. Umar said, I can't have no respect. Nobody who married a white woman. I'm thinking to myself, you don't work your whole life trying to prove that you related to Frederick Douglass. And he said, Julian Bond, he's like, I don't want you to make individuals. Freddie Douglass? but anyway, I'm going to wind this up because what we saw last week on News One Now, because the whole Umar Johnson army came at Rome. And I'm like, they must have seen something different than what I saw. I said, if y'all ever watched Roland Martin, he was nice to Umar. I'm like, dude, and Scott Boland sitting there in front of Umar's picture. Scott Boland is an attorney in D.C. He used to be the chair of the Democratic Party in D.C. He agreed with it on interracial marriage. In fact, he even quoted his mother. In fact, Scott's mother here in this city. That he came, he's out of Chicago. He said, you know, my mother would often say that you had these people who talk black and sleep white. And he said, brother, I would be inclined to agree with you, but the way you couch it, and then he said, the way some of you nationalists go, oh boy, here we go, because then the Reconstructing got involved and started talking about what do they call it? Hotel brand. You see, let me pause. I'm gonna pause because I can see your husband. I always say that about Jenny, your speech. Because I'll be wanting to get on these Negroes that have these websites where they talk about hotel as if that's somehow some type of, you know, but guess what? We're trying to build a world. Those Negroes will come too when we win, and we'll have space for them to come in as well. So, I mean, our fight is not with them, but they do the why I had to pull myself back. But Scott, and I'm sitting there watching this laughing. Why? Because Scott is a member in good standing of Sigma Pi Phi, the dreaded bootleg. And I'm saying, okay, well, Mark, if you built like that, dude, you did your homework, it's time for you to go on into the thing. Nah. Because here's a dude in the bootleg agreeing with your position. Now it's getting complicated. But guess what? All the people who said, Roland Martin, ambush, Umar Johnson, you need to apologize. Well, okay, we have gone so far now past. Because this cyberspace issue has created a threat to the collective. Because now you've got commentary and spectacle as mastery. Umar did what? Come on now. In fact, this is the most recent issue, the first issue, in fact, of Catalyst, the new journal just came out. Race is not enough. This is Cedric Johnson, the guy that's got his PhD at Howard. He works at up the street at University of Illinois, Chicago. He says, without the kind of protracted political engagement and real commitment that stretches beyond cadre and mass demonstrations, we run the risks of reducing social struggle to expressions of consumer niche identity, like t-shirts, viral memes, and nouveau race films that Black Lives Matter has already spawned. Cedric's point is, without deep political engagement, it all becomes sloganeering. And then once it becomes sloganeering, then it just becomes a question of the spectacle. And once it's the spectacle, then it just gets moved around, and eventually it becomes absorbed, if we know how these cycles work, by the very thing we say we're fighting. So all this stuff gets funded by other people. And his argument is that race isn't enough. In other words, we all black. That's not enough. Because who does Umar appeal to? Who's our friend and brother Umar Johnson appeal to? In terms of the demographic, so to speak. Young black men. Handful of women, but mostly young black men. Young black men of a certain social economic class. Yeah, cats out here just trying to hustle and make it, right? These cats out here, you see these young boys out here. Umar has their ear. Is it because they hate black people? Quite the contrary. Is it because they hate black women? See, I don't think so. But we need to have that dialogue. But how do we get to the dialogue when the spectacle is there? And what Cedric is saying is that race isn't enough. In fact, the name of his article is "The Panthers Can't Save Us Now." His argument is race identity is not enough to bind us because the class in the black community split after World War II. And then desegregation comes, and the black middle class, the black elite, began to get away from everybody else and kind of left the field. There was a time when everybody was packed together and couldn't get away. So everybody went to the same high schools, lived in the same communities. And Cedric is like, yeah, that ain't gonna save us anymore. You gotta have coalition with other people. Okay. Now this book just came out, Jason Riley's book. Jason Riley writes for the Wall Street Journal. False Black Power. Y'all ever seen him? Be on Fox News and stuff like that. I don't watch a lot of Fox, but yeah. This just came out. He said, the conventional attitudes of blacks toward marriage, parenting, school, and work a century ago aided and abetted this unprecedented black economic advancement and complicate liberal claims that black antisocial behavior in the 21st century is a legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. He's saying, you know, if you go back before, black people had better attitudes toward marriage, parenting, school, and work 100 years ago. What do y'all think? That's perhaps arguable, right? How would you test it? I mean, the assumption is it's correct, right? We feel it's correct. I'm not saying it's correct or incorrect, but it is a feeling that 100 years ago, in 1917, there was a different set of values in our communities. Not completely. Every type of person we have now, we had then. But in terms of the percentage and the mix, we get a sense that perhaps the threat we faced collectively, I mean, hey, we're in Chicago. Come on, Red Summer is 2 years from 1917, right? East St. Louis, 1917, 1919 here. I mean, you see this collective trust, right? But then he goes on and says, since the 1960s, the focus on developing human capital has shifted to a focus on acquiring political power, a false sense of power. And this change in priorities has coincided with dramatic changes in black trends over the past half-century. Let's pause there, because there's perhaps no better place in the country to think through what that matter might not be than the one we're in right now. As Harold Washington's picture greets us as we come in this room. And I think about listening again to Carr talk about the Washington campaign and all the politics behind that and before it. it after that. I mean, what does it mean to have black political power for black people, and what has it gained, what have we gained from it? Because he really goes in on Barack Obama, another adopted son of this wonderful August community. Says that was worthless. But Riley is coming from what we might consider the hard right. What he's saying is black communities have a crisis of values. That sounds like a lot of black nationalists. That's a lot of us. But his argument is, you gotta stop saying racism is the issue. We're not gonna say that. But it's complicated. Because there is so much more we can do. But again, going back to Kerry James Marshall, the sense of the possible that is folded into that collective excellence, that collective mastery he invites us into, that sense of the possible can't start in a binary whiteness. We got to figure out some kind of way to transcend it. And that difficulty, it seems to me, that difficulty really is at the crux of what we have to face when it comes to education and politics. I'm almost done. Collective can be created. It can be created under utopic circumstances. You know, utopia literally means no place. Limited resources, but we have place. Think about what we've been able to accomplish with limited resources, but we were together in a place. That is the history of this institution. That is the history, I guess, Director's got up to in this very moment, right? More and more limited resources, and yet here we are on a Friday night, puzzling through how we can liberate ourselves. When you think about the work that our scholars have done, I'm just focusing on scholars right now for a moment, maybe about 60 seconds just to make this statement. Think about what our scholars have done with no funds, no grants, working long hours at often outside the area of their research scholarship, and the contributions to shift entire ways of thinking about the world. That is a question of that's a utopic circumstance. In other words, you created the reality you want to live in. And for 2 or 3 hours in this study group, in this room, we were all free. And out of that came an idea. And 30 years later, 40 years later, I think about some of the children of the folks in this room who you all have sent to Howard, up to including some of the people in this room, and I think about the fact that y'all are a direct result of that type of utopic circumstance. And Howard doesn't deserve you. No black college does. Because those schools look more like the critique Jason Riley is raising. Because the idea is that somehow you can acquire some form of political or economic power, meaning you can become a representative, somehow you'll advance the race. That is utterly absurd on its face. And it's been disproven so much now that it ought to be a truism. Because that is not why any of us send our children to places like the one I work at, so they can achieve as individuals. And yet, the thrust of those institutions do a terrible job, while masking as if it's collective uplift, of actually engendering collective uplift. It's about individual achievement as representative of the group. And it gets us doesn't get us very far. So, we can intuit and fill spaces with meaning. The event becomes an archive, as I said. What is missing and how can we add to it with what we have to say? We can recover ideas, and recovery of ideas is more important now than ever. Study and mastery as collective practice. Let's talk about that a little while. In fact, I stopped by the University of Chicago this morning. They got a little exhibit over there in the economics building on those cats that like the dons of economics theory. You'll see that's what they built on. Law and economics, if you don't know Richard Posner in law, then they really, which is interesting to me because I teach a class at Howard Law School. As you heard Rick Scott say, I teach a class over there. And the class I teach, Race, Law, and Change, is a deep engagement with every area of the law, every major area of the law that has impacted black people in our sojourn here in the country. We spend about a week on each category, property, and we spend a week on voting rights, and then we look at the criminal justice system, all these things, look at the case law, statutes, and this kind of thing. But ultimately, the thing that strikes me is that most of my students are third-year law students, second and third-year law students, no first year. The first-year law students have a very rigid curriculum, so they get to me for the elective. And time after time, they say to me, Dr. Carr, this is why I came to Howard. I was looking for this. I thought this was going to be in all the classes. In other words, what is the intellectual architecture behind the plumbing? Is that that's what Gates, see, this looks like tar, Theaster Gates thing. This is tar, this looks like wood, but what it is an idea. And together we can bring this idea out through discourse. I'm gonna put it somewhere where we can have a dialogue around that. And so these young people who are becoming, you want to go to, they're encouraged to go into corporate law to make money. They want to go into civil rights law. It's seen as almost a largesse, you know. And then even though they say that Howard University is going to train social engineers, the pressure on them is often to get those jobs, to help them pay back those student loans. And when they come in a room and we start talking about the intellectual architecture of property law, and what it means to dispossess someone of a self and then extend that to real property. And then we start talking about Terrius Nullis and the doctrine of discovery and Johnson versus McIntosh, how these Europeans say, I put my foot on it, which means I own everything, I can see it. Even though you're standing on it, now I own it because you don't have a title, and so therefore we're going to move as if you are trespassing. And you follow it through the law. It's like, well, this is absurd. And so the question is, how do you not reverse engineer it, but how do you transcend it? But you have to understand it first. And they say, I thought this is what we were going to be doing. No. No, most law schools teach you how to be a plumber. A good plumber. People want a good lawyer, they want a good plumber, right? But here, we can recover these ideas, but study and mastery has to be a collective practice. And when you look at this quote from Milton Friedman, these guys just sat around talking and writing books. They advise governments, but this is what Friedman says. Friedman says the true test of any scholar's work is not what his contemporaries say, but what happens to his work in the next 25 or 50 years. And the thing that I would really be proud of is if some of the work I have done is still cited in the textbooks long after I'm gone. And they also had out a bunch of Nobel Prizes. You see how these Nobel medals they got up over there. Some of y'all been over there and seen this little exhibit, right? Let me go over here and look at this, because I don't never know when I'm going to be over here again. I want to say I saw it. Take a couple pictures. But think about how the world now looks at black people, and think about how much of that work started in this space when nobody thought it was important. Think about now the things that we take for granted. All these kids are lining up to go see Black Panther. They're all fired up. You got to have something black on TV. And of course, everybody in here, some much more than others, but everybody here remembers when that was a novelty to have some black people on TV. But now they're not only on TV, they all African-centered. You got somebody, you know, like, what happened? Because the people who started that were in utopic circumstances. And in a minute, in fact, we have to wind this up because I'm looking forward to this next day. Yes, sir. Collective work insulates us from that sunken place, even when it's depressing. And y'all been to this corner of the museum? It's the new museum in D.C. Yes, you know exactly what it is, right? In fact, it's interesting. People say, oh, the bottom 3 floors, slavery's in the basement, then you come up, then you reflect, then you go up to the culture stuff. I started the culture stuff, right? Because you can't disaggregate culture by chronology, right? So, I mean, and plus, you get on the elevator at the museum, as you're going down into the enslavement part, they got this violin playing. I'm not mad, though, because there are many spirit centers. And see, when you put, again, things matter. Place matters. I don't care how much narrative you surround it with. I don't care how much you want us to think a certain way about it. When you put things in a place, they have their own power. And when you curate, you can curate all you want, but we're going to talk to each other. And when you walk in that room down there on the second from the bottom floor where Emmett Till's casket is, and you see black people taking their hats off and walking in like it's a funeral, in that little room, it don't matter what y'all wrote on the walls. This thing is curating something else. We have a collectivity here. There's not a feeling of triumph in that moment, but there is a feeling of common purpose. There's a politics in that room, and it's anchored in the culture. This is one of those centers for me. There's a lot of them, and I go in there and something. And by the way, you know, people say you can't get in. You can get in any day of the week. All you got to do is go in there around noon. They give the day of tickets. Right now, they've been running anywhere between 30 and 40% of the tickets that are reserved aren't used. So at 1 o'clock every day, the sister comes out with a big stack of tickets, and you in the line, she gives you a ticket. So those of you who worry about planning trips, no, just come on to D.C. Monday through Friday, don't do it on weekends. But trust me, I've been down there, I test it. Every few weeks, I just go down and test it. Few days, I've seen her with tickets in her hand after she done gave everybody in the line a ticket, looking for people to get tickets to. But when you go, this is one of those places for me True feeling and just expression are not confined to any clime or color. There's Paul Robeson. The artist must elect to fight for freedom or for slavery. I've made my choice. And over here, barely seen, is Burt Williams. That's the hell of a corner. Why is that corner, for me, why is that corner, and what does that corner have to say about performing blackness? But more important, the fact that even though these are three individuals, they are both, all three rather, they are anchored in collectivity, which means their mastery is not an individual performance as much as it is a collective form, a political form of performance. Well, let's look at it right quick. Our knowledge, blackness is universal. The Irish went to the African Free School. That's where I was at. Crummel and I went to school in New York. I mean, this is a guy who says, you know, I can do anything y'all can do, and I'm better than all of y'all at this. You got black people in chains when our Aldridge is touring around Europe as a fellow. I mean, you got black people literally, the humanity black people is under direct global assault, and Aldridge is at the top of his profession of any color. Now, of course, Robeson was well aware of Aldridge. Robeson's blackness is pluriversal. That's Sterling Stuckey, another no stranger to this room, to this building, to this city. Blackness is pluriversal, meaning what? He said, I want to be African, as Sterling Stuckey talks to me. He said, I'm an African. I want to know my people. I have these theories about language. I'm learning language. And so my blackness is not diminished by other people's humanity, and I don't diminish other people's humanity. So Robeson moves through the world as a citizen of the world, but he doesn't move as a citizen of the world without a center. He's anchored in that, and it's because of his father, it's because of who his wife is and who her people are, it's because of all those collectives together. It's because of everything he goes through. So when Robeson comes out, he's representing the collective. And of course, the state has to move against that. They can't tolerate that kind of thing. And then finally, interestingly enough, the third of Burt Williams. Blackness as invasive. Burt Williams, George Walker, these cats had a book club, these black actors and musicians in New York. They were heavy bibliophiles, these dudes, when they came out from under the grease paint, right? He's from the Caribbean, right? Barbados, Burt Williams. Or it's Bermuda. It's Bermuda. Burt Williams portrays this black-faced minstrel, but when you look at his studies, at his work, in the context of his times, he's not a coon. But look at what he's doing with his resources. I mean, people make that argument about Lincoln Perry, you know, Stephen Fetchit, and all those people, you know, Henry McDaniel, who said, you know, I'd rather, you know, play a maid than be one, which is kind of a class, its own class tensions. But I mean, you understand the point she's making. But then you get to this. Now, he ain't got no blackface on. But see, get out. Get out. Blackness as lowest common denominator. So rather than I've been anchored in excellence and mastery by the best black teachers, by the best folks, white teachers, I've come through this now. Rather than I have maximized my human ability with the support of my wife, my family, my community, and now I'm speaking to the world and resisting on behalf of humanity. Instead of, I've come out of a tradition of hard labor, I've mastered my craft, and with all the tensions, I still have formed collectiveness with others as we move forward. With George Walker, Aida Walker, Overton Walker, with James Rosemont Johnson and James Weldon Johnson. Instead, get out. What's the collective? The class tension. Why is that even there in the first place? Why are you there in the first place? Here's the class tension Jason Rowley talking about. What's the collective? Now I'm trying to make this move. And who saves him? The working class brother. But the working class brother almost reinscribes like Toto in the Wizard of Oz. The animal always sees what it is. See, y'all convinced, all you Negroes want degrees and y'all want that, so the wizard got y'all, but the dog was like, that little dude right there. So my man Williams, the TSA guy's like, nah, I tell you about these white people, man. But what is blackness reduced to? Is blackness the lowest common denominator? Because they never tell you where you're going. Get out and go where? Oh no, just get out. There's no vision, there's no collective purpose, there's no mastery, there's just a dull response to race that pulls this Negro back into the race. And my question at the last thing to get out is, okay, when they get home, then what? Does he go look for for the white girl who's not like that. because the lowest common denominator is the threat of whiteness, and that's no way to be black. Oh, no, get off. Yeah, nah, not me. That's some Kahinde Wiley. No, I want to carry change more. People's things and places. How do we reconstruct community through the archive? This is a new book just came out, the Carr catalog. Before it was written by, we'll talk about the Black Carr in a second. Written by the sister, the D sisters are watching. I love this. I go to the Library of Congress probably about twice a month. Now y'all know who they waving at, right? The sister who worked here. That's her and her mother being sworn in, Carla Hayden being sworn in as the Library of Congress. And those sisters on the rail in the rotunda at the Library of Congress waving at her. A lot of sisters work at the Library of Congress. Some of the baddest librarians, research librarians, and they just be walking around in there. And if you don't pay attention, you will realize some of the baddest minds we have walking around, and they like, I wish more black people come down here. We got all this stuff. You know, but here's the interesting thing about Carla Hayden. This is what she wrote in the foreword of that book, the Carr catalog. I said, one of my first assignments when I began my library career was to file Library of Congress Carr catalog sets into a wooden case in a storefront branch of the Chicago Public Library. The importance of accuracy and the responsibility of the Carr catalog was impressed upon me. What is a Carr catalog? What is a Carr catalog? Let's just pause here and think about this just for a second before I go to the next slide. I got a couple more. What happens when you lose your memory? What happens when we lose our archive? What happens when we even lose the record that we had an archive? Carr catalogs are the records of what we had. You ever gone through a Carr catalog and then in a library where some of the books been stolen? Oh, this book. It's gone. It's gone. When it's gone, it's gone. Everything's not inside of space. In fact, most of our stuff is not. I always come in and say. So when we talk about the Black Power movement, which we know, and we don't talk about the Black Power movement tonight, other than to say that it is the thrust at a moment when you see black collectivity exceed the bounds of white imagination. This isn't about the politics of respectability, getting dressed up to prove that we're human and make America. No, this is about no, that's it, it's over. The Black Arts movement, which in many ways is the creative thrust of the Black Power movement. The Black University movement. That's really, when you think of inner city studies, I remember being at Carruthers about 3 or 4 years ago when we, right in this room, we talked about this question of inner city studies, right? What does it mean to have inner city studies? That's not about a black studies program. That's about transforming the way we think about human engagement in these urban spaces. That's a revolutionary concept. It should be, far from having people enrolled in kind of a steady trickle, it should be impossible to get a class in this building. Because ultimately, when more than half of the world is living in cities and more coming every day, inner city studies should probably be the primary discipline. Because it isn't one thing. It is, in fact, how do you live and manage this new political economy? So, but the Black University movement at Howard and Jackson State, and you know, we were interviewing a brother last week, Andrew Billingsley, 91 years old, brother still making his move. When Vincent Harding is at Morehouse, and Stephen Henderson is at Morehouse, one in sociology, one in English, and Martin Luther King is assassinated, and the students decide, they go to the administrators in the Atlanta University Center and say, change the name of all these schools. Together, this should become Martin Luther King University. What a collective moment. Can you imagine if kids see us doing that? No more Morehouse, no more Spelman, no more Morris Brown, no more Clark. The Martin Luther King University. And it was too much. Class sensibility, oh, it was too much. So Vincent Harding leaves, Stephen Henderson leaves, they start the Institute of the Black World, and then Stephen Henderson comes to Howard and starts the Institute for the Art of Humanities, and there's a Black Studies movement. But it was a missed moment. Without a Carr catalog, we can't even chart that, which is where I'm going. But we have the traces. Does anybody remember this book?
Yes.
I know Dexter and Patricia Oliver. Y'all see when it was published, right? Third World Press. Now this book right here. Y'all know this book. This is the acknowledgement page. We wish to thank the following brothers and sisters. Y'all stop me when you. Gus and Agnes Oliver, Donald Brown, Jim Brown, Annie Buck, Montague Cobb, Charlotte Featherstone, Edward Love, come on y'all, Rogers Bishop, Jacqueline Slade. Montague Cobb name caught my eye. This is the museum again. That's Montague Cobb. Montague Cobb was a polymath, had an MD and a PhD, biological anthropologist. He was an incredible dude. He was at Howard. He was a young boy when the students ran off the last white president of Howard University, Stanley Durkee, and the first black one came, first permanent black one. The first black one was John Russell Langston, but he wasn't permanent. The first permanent black president came, Mordecai Johnson. Mordecai Johnson called in Elaine Locke, who had been let go by the last white president. Goes to show you. He said, look, man, you got some names. I want to bring some more black people. And this is where you see that surge of people that eventually become Ralph Bunche and Charles Hamilton, Houston, and all these other people. That, you know, but one of the names that Locke gives him, he said, you got a young guy down here who's getting the MD, you got a PhD, Montague Cobb. Don't let him go. Cobb is immortalized in the museum. He's up there in the museum. This is a guy who was not only a scientist, not only a medical doctor, he was a social force. He said we must use our skills to uplift the community, and I am all dedicated to training and teaching the next generations of black science. Now there's also another person who was immortalized. I'm not mad at this brother. Genius surgeon. Ben Carson's quote, education enabled all my dreams to come true. That's all you need to know. The individual, the collective. I went to the funeral of a brother who was one of the most famous graduates of my undergraduate institution, me and Mama Ife, Levi Watkins, the great Levi Watkins, master surgeon. Lived and worked at Johns Hopkins, went to Vanderbilt after he came out of Tennessee State undergrad. And when I went to Levi Watkins' memorial service in Baltimore, you couldn't get into church. All the doctors he had trained. He started a gospel choir at Johns Hopkins. The people who cleaned up at Johns Hopkins loved him. Everybody loved Levi Watkins. The chancellor of Vanderbilt University, chancellor of Johns Hopkins University, all these white surgeons and doctors came to pay respects. And this man moved an entire community. Everything he did was for service. And I looked around, and you know my question, where's Ben Carson? I thought Ben Carson worked at Johns Hopkins. And one by one, they told his dude, ain't do nothing for us. Now, he did a lot of people, because I know a lot of children. Remember when he came to Howard? Because all the kids, when they were in the 8th grade, read Gifted Hands, you couldn't get in there to see him. So I'm not saying he wasn't important, and he isn't important. But when you see, like Jack Robinson said, you know, life is only important as how it affects other lives. When you went to Levi Watkins, you can see the people. Just like, my goodness. But then you look at this quote, and he explains it. That question of individual thrust. I ain't saying the guy's complete. But here's some of the pages. This is in I Want to Be. I want to be a doctor, so I can help our African people who are sick and injured. I want to be a doctor so I can help prevent disease. I want to be a doctor so that I can use the medical wisdom of our ancestors and the science of today to cure disease. I want to be a doctor so that I can find new and better ways to treat disease. I want to be a doctor so that I can keep our African nation healthy. I want to be a good doctor, so I must learn mathematics, science, and the history of African people. That's the last line of all of them. Now, we ain't gonna go through the whole alphabet, but I'm saying this little children, I'm thinking to myself, I love this. I keep saying, man, somebody gotta bring this back into print. I mean, because this is something we want you to be in the STEM field so that you can go ahead and there are good paying jobs. Dude, what's the purpose? There's a political education that has to take place. I mean, what? Here's the architect. A man says, I can design the buildings where our African people work and live. So I can design more schools, hospitals, factories, homes, and office buildings for our people. I want to be an architect so that I can design good, strong buildings for our African line and climate. I want to be an architect so I can design buildings for the needs of our people. And so for you, he got to study math and science, right? Same thing with a zoologist. There she is. She wants to study the many animals of our world, study the growth of animals from the earth's beginnings as tiny living cells. I want to be a zoologist so I can study how the animals of the sea and land adjust to their surroundings, so that I can understand how the animals of today came into being, so that I can study how different forms of animal life help our nation's people. She's talking about the black nation. So I must learn mathematics and science. I want to be a mathematician so that I can help advance the science and industry of our African nation. So that I can discover new mathematical rules, so I can use math to build a strong nation as our African ancestors did centuries ago. And she got to learn math, science, and history. Right? I mean, I think about the curriculum stuff that came out of Chicago and Detroit. All that work out of Detroit. Without an archive, we get in conversations with people who don't know nothing. And say, we're going to develop. No! Get the Carr catalog! We got to stop. Milwaukee, all those battles. And we got 50 years of ammunition. We got 100 years of that. Because 50 years ago, they can point to the earlier days. We have to figure out a way to bring all that back. Urban planner, and then finally, teacher. I want to be a teacher so that I can train the workers of our nation. Imagine, because many of us in this room are teachers. I want to be a teacher so that I can teach our true African history. Think about it. How many children are encouraged to be teachers? That's the last thing children do. What? I don't be no teacher. I hate school. I mean, children say I hate school with their whole heart. I'm like, you know, when a child says something like that with their whole heart, you got to ask yourself, what happened to the collective? Where's the political will? This little boy they put this in, I want to be a teacher so I can help our students grow with a strong feeling of African unity. We all know this. E-pay, I mean, those who taught and worked in there, all that fruit. And I say I get the benefit of being at Howard because they send a lot of people there, and after 3 minutes of conversation, you find out, oh, I know Mama so-and-so, or I know Baba so-and-so. Like, okay, well then, you won't be surprised then to know that you're about to be recruited into something else. Because for these 4 years, you're not going to be able to shirk your responsibility. You come up in my purview, you 18 years old, start talking about Shule and Wanafunzi. Okay, come on. But no, because you know better. Now, y'all can do what y'all want after, dark, and I'm going to look the other way within reasonable limits. Because some of y'all, I know you people, and I will tell. I want to be a teacher so I can teach our students that there's no difference between a plumber or a doctor because we're all workers for our African nation. I'm telling you right now, they ain't saying that. So we'll close with Boyd Fuller. You got what this is? Man. We have tapes at Howard from the Institute of Arts and Humanities. Stephen Henderson led it after he left Atlanta with Bessie Hardy, that haven't been looked at in 40 years. One of the tapes that we digitized in a small format, and we're keeping it very close, because again, Black people protect their archives. We're not playing it. It's what we're grant for Black scholars at Black colleges. Slowly but surely, we're going to get this done. And one of the tapes hadn't been seen since it was taped April 22nd, 1974, was Boyd Fuller. He came and talked at Howard. This is within months of the demise of Black world. And you hear him talk. It's really, it's almost too much to hear him talk about what it meant for him to clean out his desk at Johnson Publications. And then to go home and start reading through all the correspondence from the people around the country who thanked him for what Black World was, what Negro Digest was. And he said at that moment, I felt like what we had tried to do was being justified. To this day, I don't know that there's a single publication for as long as it published. Blackman's Bulletin, of course, Afrocentric World Review, of course, but the quality of those publications has not been matched. And they are virtually invisible. And of course now, Black World and Negro Digest, all of them online. Google Books, you can look at any one of them you want. But I have them. In his talk that day, he said there are 3 threats to Black literature and Black hegemony, Black control over. 1, Black apathy. Negroes are not subscribing. Number 2, external dominance over Black ideas and expression. And number 3, the crisis in Black publishing and Black literary publications. That's not an issue now. The issue isn't people being able to get their words out. The issue is too many words don't mean nothing. Cyberspace has turned this into a very difficult moment. But how can we create a utopistic kind of place where we can begin to convene politically and get this back? Well, he got up enough money to start First World. Some of y'all subscribe to First World. Then we got a few issues out. This is volume 2, number 4, Crisis in Black Leadership. And of course, there's one of the greats, Tony K. Lombard. He's talking there about, he's got some issues on politics. He finally got his legs out in under him, got some funding, he had moved to Atlanta, looked like they had a publisher in New Orleans who was going to pick this up, and he had a heart attack and died. And First World was over. But this is from the editor's page of First World, that lavender copy there. A question of values. He says, what is suggested here is that in seeking to rescue young blacks from becoming, quote, an endangered species, there's an urgent need for the kind of concentrated and committed community action which would reach young blacks at the elementary school level and expose them to projects and programs designed to provide them with necessary resources for productive lives. Not the least of those necessary resources, here it goes, is a knowledge of the history of this nation and of the black role in it, an understanding of slavery and its economic rationale. Think about this, if they learned this in the first grade, third grade, fourth grade. Right? The economic factors which undergirded the Civil War, the economics behind failed Reconstruction and the generations of separate but equal policies, and the geopolitical essence of the post-World War II drive for integration. I think about this when I think about all the young activists who are out there with their whole heart, they're out there with their bodies, they're putting their everything on the line with no knowledge of this. Against forces that are like, okay, we're going to wait another 6 months, then we're going to give them a grant. And if they had read Crisis of the Negro Intellectual with all its flaws, they would know what's coming next. That part that's on me. But by the time they get to me, you know, other than having, Alex will tell you, other than having a pistol on they say, read this, I'm going to blow your brains out, which is very severe sounding, isn't it? Short of that, the most eloquent, well-reasoned, thoughtful writing a lot of students do now is after they have received the F and they are grieving to the president and provost and Nate and everyone else. On January 31st, I submitted, you had written like this 6 months ago. So Hoyt winds up by saying, this knowledge would make clearer to befuddled black Americans. Think about befuddled black Americans. Why? Nah, I'm like Valerie. Y'all see Valerie Castillo, Philando Castillo's mother? Not on the steps of the State House in St. Paul, but in her car on Facebook Live after. That was one of the most eloquent speeches. I put that right there with Fannie Lane. And I can't repeat it now because every other word was a curse word, but I am so happy. This woman lost her son. It settled for $3 million. Y'all saw what the father, who is locked up for life, said. Don't want to pay. He said, they killed my son. That's the end of my line. He said, that's the end of my lineage. This man would never get out of jail. So she contacted him. I don't know. None of it. So befuddled blacks, he says, this knowledge will make clearer to befuddled black Americans why we remain, after more than 3 centuries of struggle here, outside the so-called American mainstream. It will prevent blacks from being suckered in by the notion of making it in a determinedly racist society whose choices of economic system assures that the group which by definition will inhabit the bottom rung will not be white. See, that's the important thing to understand. Blackness is the farthest away, but by no means, somebody got to be at the bottom and it's not going to be us. With that knowledge, well, I'm sorry, that's the idea. That's the idea. Cat in the White House, the clown, is about to do something about that. With that knowledge, blacks will be better prepared to devise responses to the system which would frustrate the designs of its manipulators. So, I'll end with this slide because I brought a few from Philly. I don't go to Philly no more. That, my friends, is sleep deprivation. I brought a few from D.C. Of course, with the great Anderson Thompson there, the compass. This is the second volume, the first issue of the second volume. A lot of the editors are here tonight. Incredible work. In fact, many people who are on the team that edited Dr. Thompson's piece are here tonight. And if we have it, then we have the potential of bringing it out. We got to do a better job of reading and writing, of constructing our archive collectively and requiring mastery. Because with that, I'll take our chances. I'll take our chances as the American state disintegrates. We'll have to save everybody. We just got to be prepared for what comes next. So I'll stop with that. 2 hours, 15 minutes is a long time.